Police opened fire in Taipo after a driver tried to knock down officers with his car. The aftermath from floods in the New Territories last night. And Trump accuses China of stalling progress with North Korea.
Hello and a very good evening. Police opened fire this afternoon when the driver of a car tried to run down police officers near the Lam Cam Road interchange in Taipo. This happened when police were chasing a van, which was later found to have been stolen some time ago.
Right after police opened fire, the Lam Cam Road interchange was on lockdown. Officers searched the area for cartridges. Police got involved after they were alerted to a missing vehicle. A noodle factory staff member spotted the company van, which was stolen 10 days ago. He called the police at around 1 p.m. and he gave chase along with a police vehicle. As the three vehicles reached the Lam Cam Road interchange, the suspicious van circled the roundabout there multiple times. The noodle factory employee intended to stop the van, but the vehicle suddenly made a turn and shoved onto a curb. The driver of the van then jumped off the vehicle and hopped into a nearby private car. Police fired a shot when the car tried to hit the officers, who gave chase. The private car then sped off. It was later found at Quang Phuc Estate in Taipo at around 4 p.m. with a bullet-damaged front door. Police set up roadblocks at Lion Rock Tunnel and Shingmun Tunnel before they found the car. This man, who claims he manages the noodle factory, said his worker hurt his leg during the chase. He has no idea why anyone would steal their van, which was used to carry noodles. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
Unsettled weather brought heavy rain to the coastal areas of Guangdong, and parts of the New Territories were flooded last night. The observatory says a few more thunderstorms are expected before showers ease off later tomorrow. Michelle Ngan takes a look at the aftermath of the floods.
This is what's left from the night of flooding. Water kept pouring onto Ping Chair Road in Ta Kwu Ling in the northern New Territories this morning. Vehicles were not in good shape. This Lei Ok Chun resident said water levels were high up to his chest at 8 o'clock last night, and he couldn't even get home. Inside this construction site office, workers were busy sweeping off the residue and mud. Electrical appliances and stationery were also wet. This worker says even though he's quite tall, his lower half body was soaked last night. Outside the workplace, these vehicles were afloat. Some even bumped into each other. Emergency crews were deployed to Lei Ok Chun last night to help evacuate residents, as well as people stranded in vehicles on flooded roads. The observatory forecasts the showers will ease off later tomorrow. Still, members of the public are reminded that during a rainstorm, they should avoid standing on high grounds. They should also stay away from highly conductive objects and trees. Drivers traveling on highways and flyovers should reduce their speed and stay alert to violent gusts.
A University of Hong Kong associate professor charged with murdering his wife is now under suicide watch while in custody. Cheung Kiat Chung arrived at the Eastern Magistracy this morning for the mentioned hearing. He's accused of killing his wife at an HKU dorm roughly 2 weeks ago. No plea was taken from the 53-year-old. The magistrate adjourned the case until November 22nd to allow for further police investigations. Cheung has been remanded in jail custody. The prosecution noted the associate professor is suicidal and asked the Correctional Services Department to give him special supervision. Meanwhile, the High Court today heard a different account of Lily Kaur, the daughter of the professor accused of murdering her and her mother. Lily's friend told the court today that the 16-year-old had a positive outlook on life, contradicting her father, who remembered her as suicidal. Here's Pinky Wong.
Sarah knew classmate and good friend of Lily Ko, took to the witness stand today. She said Lily was ambitious, intellectual, and rational. They planned to participate in an overseas academic program. The girls communicated frequently on social media. In an extracted conversation, Lily once mentioned her father was out of contact for a few days and thought he was traveling with his girlfriend. New recalled Lily was not being particularly distressed when speaking about it. Prosecutor asked if Lily ever wanted to kill herself. The classmate said no. Chen Cheng-lun, a police officer, also testified. He seized the unplugged yoga ball from the trunk of the car. Lily and her mother were found dead in a vehicle from carbon monoxide poisoning. Chan said he didn't see air plugs inside the vehicle at the time, but later found a yoga ball stopper in their house. Ko Kim-sun earlier admitted he filled the yoga ball with carbon monoxide to kill rodents. He has denied the two murder charges over deaths of his wife and daughter.
During today's hearing, jurors and witnesses got to see some of the exhibits up close, such as the yoga balls, carbon monoxide detectors, and car keys.
A forensic scientist who works at a government laboratory will testify tomorrow. Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Overseas, US President Donald Trump has warned North Korea he may restart military exercises with South Korea, and they'll be far bigger than ever before. As Sonia Artero reports, Trump is blaming China for not doing enough to pressure North Korea to end its nuclear program.
Because it's all about deal-making with Donald Trump, he's threatening North Korea and China at the same time. The U.S. president accused China of not living up to its promise to help convince the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un, to give up his nukes. So he said both countries will pay in other ways. Knowing it will anger Kim, Trump is using the scare tactic of relaunching war games with South Korea. Plus, he's refusing to bend on his trade dispute with China.
And I think that China makes it much more difficult in terms of our relationship with North Korea. I purposely didn't do much with respect to the trade on China because I wanted to see if we could work out North Korea.
Trump hoped that shelving the fall exercises would foster goodwill and help nudge Pyongyang into denuclearization talks. But beyond suspending its missile and nuclear tests, there's been little movement from the North. That's why Trump made it clear America's trade with China will also negatively affect North Korea.
As you know, China is the route to North Korea. 93% of the product and various things that go into North Korea go in through China.
The U.S. State Department confirmed insufficient progress is why the president canceled Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's visit to Pyongyang this week.
The president said we were not making sufficient progress with respect to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula scheme, and so they made the decision to postpone that trip.
Until Pyongyang returns to the negotiation table, U.S. military drills with South Korea will be carried out next spring. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Canada is hopeful that a deal to revamp the North American Free Trade Agreement can be reached by the Friday deadline. After more than a year of talks, the US and Mexico announced a bilateral deal Monday, clearing the way for Canada to rejoin the talks. Alan Buckner reports.
After being sidelined from the talks for more than 2 months, Canadian Foreign Minister Chrystia Freeland is under pressure to accept the terms the United States and Mexico worked out. She said it's a good start that Mexico made concessions on automaking rules that stipulate 75% of materials come from North American countries, and the minimum wage of Mexican auto workers is raised. Freeland said after more than a year of negotiations, the two sides know where they stand.
We're looking to stand up for our national interest, and we're looking to find compromises that are a win-win for all sides. So yes, there is a good atmosphere. We're working productively.
U.S. President Donald Trump said if a deal with Canada isn't reached by Friday, he could proceed with Mexico alone. He also raised the possibility of slapping a tariff on Canadian cars.
The deal we made is a fantastic deal. It's gotten great reviews with Mexico, trade deal. Right now we call it the U.S.-Mexico trade agreement. And we'll see whether or not Canada gets into it. Otherwise, we'll do something separately. Or we won't do anything, which is okay too.
The U.S. Congress wants a deal that includes Canada. The timeline accommodates a 90-day waiting period under U.S. law. Republicans are hoping something gets done ahead of midterm elections in November. Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto wants to sign the deal before he leaves office at the end of November. And Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faces a national election by October 2019. Alan Bucknia, TVB News.
Critics say US President Donald Trump is forcing White House counsel Don McGahn to leave in the fall. McGahn is the primary White House contact for Special Counsel Robert Mueller's probe on Russian collusion. News of his departure comes after McGahn spent nearly 30 hours answering questions for the Mueller probe. But there is word McGahn didn't plan to leave until after the midterm elections. Critics allege he's been forced out after Trump tweeted McGahn will be leaving after the expected confirmation vote for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. Still, Trump praised McGahn and insists he's not worried about what he shared with Mueller investigators.
John McGahn's a really good guy. Been with me for a long time. Privately before this, he represented me. He's been here now. It'll be almost 2 years, and a lot of affection for Don.
Any concern about what he said to the Mueller team?
No, never.
Throngs of admirers of the late American Senator John McCain stood in line for hours in Arizona to pay their final respects. At least 1,500 people viewed McCain's flag-draped coffin at the Arizona Capitol. The viewing followed an emotional private ceremony attended by McCain's family, colleagues and dozens of politicians. His wife Cindy pressed her face against his coffin. As daughter Meghan wept out loud, McCain will lie in state again at the U.S. Capitol on Friday. His funeral will be held Saturday at Washington National Cathedral, where he'll be buried on Sunday at the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland.
Fishermen from French and British fleets banged their boats against each other in an ill-tempered skirmish over scallop fishing. Every year sees problems between the fishermen over access to the lucrative scallops, but it's usually without violence or a French film crew aboard. The French are irritated that they are prevented by law from fishing during the summer months, while the British can fish year-round. The two sides have pledged to hold talks to quell the dispute.
I think it's important that we see an amicable solution to what has happened in the Channel. What we've seen between these ships, I think that's what we want. I think it's what France wants, and we'll be working on that.
And still ahead tonight, the government under fire from the Ombudsman over public market management. In Myanmar, villages flooded after a dam burst. And a 1,000-year-old painting expected to fetch $400 million at auction.
價值10萬蚊，由澳洲 Sealy 入口嘅 Legacy 系列床褥，嶄新鈦合金 REST 彈簧，讓你享受最豪華嘅舒適承托。澳洲 Sealy Legacy 系列床褥 ，One of Life's Luxuries。原裝澳洲入口床褥，優惠價限量預售。
We're back tonight with more international news. As many as 85 villages were flooded after a dam burst in Myanmar. More than 63,000 people were forced from their homes by the gushing waters that also flooded a major highway. Firefighters, troops and volunteers launched a desperate rescue effort. By this morning, water had begun to recede. 2 people were reported missing and it's feared they were washed away. The disaster spotlights safety concerns about dams in Southeast Asia. Last month, at least 27 people were killed and thousands displaced after the collapse of a hydroelectric dam in Laos. Back locally, and how would you feel if you rent an identical stall as your neighbour but have to pay 90 times more? The Ombudsman slammed an outdated policy which led to this inequality. Christy Leung with details.
You may find a good bargain at markets run by the government, but it might not be the same for some tenants. The Ombudsman found some of them are paying unfair rents.
quick disparity in rentals, which can be up to 90 times, is found between stores with same size in close proximity. But the goods sold by these stores paying lower rental are not necessarily cheaper. In other words, the benefit of low rentals are not transferred to consumers.
In 1998, the government reduced rents by 30% to attract tenants. That level remained frozen until last year and caused disparity among stores rented out at different times. The watchdog also slammed the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department, which manages the booths, for renting out 76% of the stores at below market prices. That resulted in a $1.6 billion loss in 5 years. The government's department also outsourced 2/3 of the public wet markets to contractors. Of 63 outsourced markets, some violated regulations, such as occupying passageways and using the stores for storage. In one case, operating conditions were violated when 1/3 of the stores at the market were closed for 16 days during a 2-month period in 2016.
Their inspections are too lax to effectively ensure tenants' compliance with the rules and regulations. Proactive follow-up actions are inadequate, thereby allowing irregularities to persist and grow.
In response, the Food and Environmental Hygiene Department said it mostly agrees with the Ombudsman's advices. A special team was set up last year to step up its inspection work. Christy Lung, TVB News.
14 buildings in To Kwa Wan have been sinking. All of them are near the site where the MTR Corporation is building a new station as part of the Sha Tin to Central Link project. One of the buildings subsided by about 1 centimetre, but none of the blocks were named. There were also settlement issues in Wan Chai North, where excavation works at the future exhibition centre station have now stopped. In fact, subsidence readings exceeding expected levels were recorded at monitoring points at 8 of the 10 stations now under construction along the Sha Tin to Central Link. These details were revealed in a document the MTRC submitted to the Legislative Council ahead of a special panel meeting this Friday.
Hong Kong National Party convener Andy Chan called the local government colonial puppets amid growing calls to ban his pro-independence party. Chan noted the possible ban would be something made entirely out of political servitude. He also called the new evidence given by the authorities against his group as ridiculous. Chan was referring to transcripts an assistant societies officer submitted to the Security Bureau yesterday. The transcripts were about his recent speech at the Foreign Correspondents Club and his open letter to US President Donald Trump, which the authorities said escalated the group's advocacy for Hong Kong independence to the international level. The group has until September 11th to provide its written arguments.
A Chinese painting may well fetch a record high $400 million at a local auction in November. Entitled Wood and Rock, the scroll was drawn by prominent scholar Su Shi from 1,000 years ago. Auctioneers say the withered tree branches beside a curiously shaped rock show off Su's drawing techniques. The painting made its way to a private collector in Japan. Besides its good condition, the piece is deemed rare as another famous calligrapher made his mark on the painting.
And here you also see it complemented with the calligraphy by Mi Fu, who wrote the second colophon. The calligraphy by Mi Fu is almost as rare as any painting by Su Shi that existed. So we think it's really, really unlikely that another piece that contains both the hand of Su Shi and Mi Fu to exist in art history. So it's not meant to be opened very often, and it's only opened very rarely for special occasions. Very well protected, away from the sun and humidity.
Well, a different kind of sport. More than 20,000 people took part in one of Europe's most exuberant food fights yesterday. It's the annual Tomatina Festival in Buñol in eastern Spain. The town was turned into a red war zone for an hour as people from Spain and around the world pelted each other with ripe tomatoes. 160 tons of tomatoes were used in the event, distributed to revelers by a fleet of 8 trucks. The festival was inspired by a food fight between local children in 1945. Bono is one of Spain's prime tomato producing areas. And that's the news.
Bye for now.